Hey, so I was challenged to tell my story. When I was little, my parents owned a pizza shop, and so my older brother, and I spent summers and winter and fall and spring and holidays and weekends at this pizza shop, and they had this really small black and white television for us, and that was how we entertained ourselves, and we watched shows and whatever, Tom and Jerry, and there was this televangelist that was on this TV, and so my brother and I would just like reenact stuff, and we would run around this pizza shop, and we're just smacking each other on the heads and yelling, "You are healed!" And it was just kind of all kinds of fun, but it was kind of weird too because my parents were atheists, so they had no belief system at all, and it wasn't anything that we ever talked about in our home. And so that was kind of interesting. But fast forward a few years, I'm in fourth grade, and his name was Norman Bridwell, was the author of the Clifford the Big Red Dog books. And he was coming to our school, and we were supposed to write a book and illustrate it, and then Norman was going to sign our books. And so I don't know if I felt I was above the project or what, but I didn't do it. And so the teacher calls my mom and has this conversation. They hang up, and my mom's like, "What's going on?" And of course, a string of lies coming out of my mouth. "Oh, I didn't know," whatever. And she said the dreaded words like, "Well, I think we're just gonna have to wait until your dad gets home." And I was just like done, and I'm just crying. And so I run down into the basement, like the scariest place in the house, but the basement. And I just remember raising my face up, and I'm just like, "God, help me, please, he's gonna kill me." And dramatic middle school or elementary school student. But and then I just remember thinking like, where the heck did that come from? And so that was just kind of weird. And I lived through it and made the crappiest book ever. But and then fast forward to middle school, I had this teacher, Mrs. Crawford, and I just had some really tough things going on in my life, and she walks over and she's like, "What is your problem?" Right in front of the class. And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "You haven't spoken in days." And I'm like, "Well, I'm worried about something." And she's like, "Oh, worry is a sin. Get back to work." And I was like, "I was working until you interrupted me. And what's a sin?" And she just kind of humphed and walked away. And so that was kind of like my experience with this whole God thing. And so fast forward middle school now, like late middle school, and my older brother's best friend's sister, Bueller. Her name was Jenny, and she was just like, we're hanging out and playing in the pool, and she's like, "Hey, do you want to go to church with me sometime?" And I was like, "Okay, whatever." And so I went, and I was going for weeks, and I'm hearing them talk about things, and uh, and I'm deliberating, and I'm reading, and I'm trying to figure this whole thing out. And I had endured a lot of difficult things, but I was still a nice person. I was a good person, but I had so much sadness and so much hurt and some really deep anger that no one knew about. And but they told me that God knew, and I was like, well, if He knows all of this and He still wants me to be a part of what He's doing, then I want that. And so I just remember, you know, talking to Him and asking Him and to forgive me. But there was more to it. Like there was that being obedient, and that was okay. That was cool. And I ended up getting baptized. And but what was interesting about that whole thing was that the hurt was still there, the sadness was still there, and the anger was still there, but I wasn't going through it alone. Like He was with me the whole time, and it didn't magically go away. It was just there, and but I was able to talk to Him about it, and there was light there, and there was happiness where there hadn't been before. And so I remember reading in the Bible, and there was this story about how Jesus had this flock of sheep, and it was like 100 sheep, and one of the sheep run astray, and He left the 99 and He went after the one, and brought them in. And so, like, for Jenny, I was her one. Like, she told me about church, and she told me about God, and so if you have questions, you can be my one. Like, I'll answer your questions, I'll talk to you, I'll save you a seat at church, you can sit with me and you can check it out. Like, you don't even have to make any decisions, but if you have any questions, like, give me a message, send me a message, and we'll talk, and I can share more about my story. So, love you guys.